Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Coast Files, your podcast for ocean mysteries and true crime. I'm Chantel.
I'm Lindsay.
And I'm Megan. Quick anecdote.
Oh,
This comes out in October, so
Yes.
we're still in October.
We're in October.
we're in October. In reality, I'm not, but mentally, I've been in October since July. So
Mentally, I've been in October my whole life.
correct.
So
Exactly. This is our time.
This
Their
is
time
like
to
the
shine.
most wonderful time of the year, and I sing it to the tune of the Christmas song. But no one knows. They're like, "Oh, it's too early." I'm like, "You don't know."
you don't even know.
We're all having a little beverage today because it is Friday evening as we record. So cheers.
Lindsay and I just finished our work weeks. So
Yeah, I'm almost like done my drink already.
yeah.
It's been a rough day for you
that
guys.
drink. Yeah.
Yeah, you guys
I'd
had
I mean, today
a real
wasn't
one.
even like work wasn't crazy. It was just didn't
It was
now. And I just actually my first week back away from my summer hours from my job. So now I usually
Oh my
like
God,
end
I
it at
forgot that
around
was only for
noon, and
summertime.
It was only for summer. So this is my first time since starting my job there that I've had to experience not summer hours. And yeah, I looking forward to summer. But I love fall. I love the holidays. So between January and June, I'm gonna be like, get me to summer.
I would say most people between January and June are just holding on for
I
dear
know.
life.
If I could just
Maybe,
relive like
May.
June to December and then just skip June, December, skip, like I would.
love it.
I know.
I had a very busy. My job is generally very chill. Like I am very lucky for the nursing job that I have. I cannot complain about that. But every once in a while, you have those days. And today I had to work in a different section, and we had 11 travel today. And
Okay.
travel always means that I'm giving 6 vaccinations and giving them extra stuff that they have to take home and lots of instructions. And it's like,
when you said travel, I was like, my brain was clicking. I'm like, what does she like?
travel
but
clinic.
like going down
So-
south or whatever.
Not even
I honestly
that. They're like
don't
going to
even know.
Africa, and it's like, oh, you need like typhus, and you're gonna go, in the middle of a jungle, so you need rabies, and you need
I mean,
yellow fever.
I
and
can't
you
relate
need,
to that at all. So that's why I'm like, oh, you mean like Cuba or something? But
You mean like Twin Rex? Like no, I
Like
mean
the
like
middle-
weird shit.
the
And you're
middle
gonna feel
of
like
nowhere.
crap
Yeah,
after
yeah,
having
yeah.
these
Okay.
vaccines, but like
Do
you
you
won't
remember
die.
those
so-
like memes that used to come out where like what my friends think I do, what I actually do? I feel like that'd be very a good one for your job.
Yeah, it is.
I saw, I think Lindsay were talking about the same thing. There was something going around where friend groups were getting together with like PowerPoint presentations.
I saw that.
Because I mean, like,
it was like families like presenting what you do.
this is what I do. Because I mean, it's something that we don't talk about because like when it comes down to it, we connect on every other kind of level other than our job. And
Yeah.
it just made me laugh because I'm like, yeah, there are times where I'm like, yeah, what exactly? Like, so our friend Jenna, who I don't think, Lindsay, you've even met Jenna yet. But like, what does she do? And she's changed jobs. And she's like, oh, it's been a rough day at work. I'm like, yeah, man, what do you do?
Yeah, your
though?
job is crazy.
Yeah.
Oh,
I mean, your
couldn't
job
imagine.
is the podcast right now, which is the best.
I am
when
job
you love what
hunting.
you do. When you love what you do, yeah, you're gonna get a job
Never work
for
a day.
I'm really trying to enjoy.
maybe temporarily.
Well, I'm trying to enjoy these last few, I mean, I hope that it's not longer than a few weeks, like who knows, but I'm assuming at least like a month and some of just job hunting. I'm trying to enjoy just not having to do anything other than podcast stuff because, like most people, I've worked every day of my life since like age 13, selling stuff door to door. I sold Avon or even like babysitting, and then you start
sold
getting real
Avon?
jobs. Yeah. How am I not murdered selling Avon door to door?
like 13.
Apparently, like my grandpa was like a VP at Avon at one point.
Small world. I mean, I never met him. But
No, I mean he would have been
didn't?
long retired before you were selling.
so it's just like,
But you guys both live in Nova Scotia. You must know one another.
he was actually
Yeah.
my neighbor, funny enough. Yeah. But yeah, I'm just
Your
trying
boss.
to enjoy like reading when I want to, watching
Yeah.
Gilmore Girls when I want to, because one day
Yeah,
I'll
she's
get
sending a picture at like 7:30 this morning. I'm on my way to work, and she's like,
Yeah.
cuddling up with Gilmore Girls. I'm like, fuck you, Megan.
my
period,
You know
I'm
what?
going to
Very
work.
jealous. I
know.
mean,
Uh,
I don't know this. I have 2 children, so I don't know this lifestyle anymore. But I miss.
Yeah.
and I know that I'll never have this again, so I'm just enjoying it. So yeah,
Not
hate
true.
me.
That's not
true.
true. That's not true.
We will get
We'll have it
this.
again.
But the more the podcast picks up, the more like I would be
Yeah.
happy to do it. But like
Yeah,
you know,
but it'll be
you're
fun
free-
work. It'll be fun
yeah.
work.
No, yeah, no,
So,
you're right.
Yeah.
And work from home, mainly.
Yeah.
so,
Or
you know,
like
it's not just
retreat with your
ideal.
besties.
Oh my God. Yes, guys. Just as we get into this case, if you want to buy us a coffee, spelled KO-FI, coffee.com/coastfiles, you can
it.
donate $1, $5, $1,000, whatever.
Whatever's in your budget.
Whatever you have extra. If you're like, I'm gonna
Yeah.
skip on avocado toast this month, so I can give the gals
To
$2,000.
our what we assume is our number one listener, James Cameron. You can donate more, obviously, because you have more money. But like,
James, are you
Or our
average
collective
listener.
husband. Collective
Yeah,
husband can
yes.
also, donate.
Victor, not Vince.
big
I had him
into-
on.
yes, right.
but
We know you invest, so you can invest here too.
and you're gonna
So-
get good ROI on this podcast. But if you have an extra dollar or two kicking around, it literally is going to go to paying for the software that we use to run this show. Essentially, Chantel and Lindsay do all the heavy lifting, so it's going to pay for all that stuff and pay for our Canva and pay for our recording equipment and et cetera, et cetera. So that would be
And if we make enough one day, hopefully it'll pay for an editor. So Lindsay and I
An
won't
actual
have to do
coffee,
that
maybe
anymore.
too.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
the coffee.
You could
while we
actually
work.
buy a coffee for us. at
Actually,
some point,
so
but-
speaking of that, so if you do decide to give us a little tip or buy us a coffee, quote unquote, that would be freaking amazing. And then speaking of coffee, has anyone had a PSL yet? I know we're recording.
I have
I'm
because
not
I bought the
really-
pumpkin spice cake Nespresso pod, and
which
was
are
very
very,
good.
very good. I had one.
It was very good. It was like it actually tasted like, sometimes you buy coffee and you're like, it doesn't taste like how it says it's gonna taste.
Yeah.
But this one does.
Like, you mean every time, or it tastes too over the top in flavor, and I'm like, calm down.
Right.
It's 7 a.m. They're like punching me in the face.
Like
with
punch you,
vanilla.
yeah.
too much.
yeah. Yeah, I love
for-
my Nespresso. It makes it so
For
easy.
a fun treat, because I have started going back to the gym, which is like hallelujah. So sometimes on the way
job.
back, thank you. If it's like really hot, because today it's cloudy, but like 2 days ago it was 35 degrees Celsius.
Yep.
And Fahrenheit, I don't know what that is. 100. It's a lot. So I was like, oh, I'm gonna get like an iced coffee, and I see that all their pumpkin stuff is out. So it was like a cold brew with pumpkin something foam. Oh my
Ooh,
God, the cold foam! I could
Life-changing?
just drink the cold foam.
yeah. The sweet
all.
vanilla cream cold foam.
Yeah,
at
so
Starbucks.
very,
is
very
my
similar.
favorite summer drink. So good.
It's freaking delicious, man. I haven't had
I
their
drink
pumpkin
Tim
muffin
Hortons,
yet, but
so like.
hey, you can
Chantel's our
still,
basic coffee girl, but we
you
love
can
her.
still get in there.
Listen. I get like their iced lattes, because I love their oat milk. They use Chobani, and you can't get Chobani in Canada anymore. The only place you can get it is at Tim Hortons for some reason. So I love Chobani
Well,
oat milk.
if you come to visit
So
me,
I
you
get
can
there.
get some.
Oh, I will. I'll
mean,
have a
that's-
suitcase full of
I'm
oat
like,
milk
is
on
she
the way
here
back.
for me? Is she here for the oat milk? We'll never know.
Definitely
Lindsay,
there for the oat
at
milk.
this point, it's just oat milk now.
Oh, you don't have to try to
It's just the
try to
oat
make me
milk.
feel better. That's fine. We've known each other too long. There's no
Yeah,
lies between
there's
us.
no lying. Yeah,
So based
you would
on-
know.
on
You would
the-
see right through me.
on the honesty. Yeah.
She's
Chantel's
chugging
a
oat
bad
milk in my
liar.
kitchen, and she hasn't even talked to me yet. I'm like,
3 a.m. just hunched over the sink with like
Yeah.
she's
Like
growing
a
to a
gremlin.
monster. Yeah.
I'm like, do you want to see your goddaughter? Oh, no,
Who?
you're busy with oat milk. Okay.
Who's that? She's drinking oat milk with me. Just
Oh yeah, she loves everything that is food or calorie. Like she loves. So
Perfect.
Yeah, she'll be right there with
She's
you.
gonna fit right in.
yeah.
Okay, well, we're not here to talk about how much we love coffee or hate Starbucks
oat
in
milk.
Chantel's case, or how much we were obsessed with oat milk. So, Lindsay, why don't you take us through? Because on purpose, Chantel, I think you did this too. Have not looked into this, have hardly even read, so I have no idea. All I know is that you got gleefully excited, said, but there's a lot of death. So I'm getting mixed signals.
There is.
I'm getting mixed signals.
Yes. So, what I'm about to tell you about is a story you might not know if you're not from Chicago or if you haven't lived in Chicago like myself. So, I've been in Chicago now for 7 years.
How?
Oh my
And
god.
I know.
Sorry, go ahead. I just
Crazy. I know, it's so crazy. Maybe for our listeners, tiniest backstory. I was vacationing with Megan.
That's me,
and
hi.
We decided to visit Chicago. And during this trip, I randomly bumped into this guy named Eric. And flash forward a little ways, he's now my husband. So I bumped into him outside of a bar. He started taking us around, gave us a little tour, and he got my number. No, I did not sleep with him.
That time.
Later, obviously, because we have children. But like, not that.
They
not
did
at that
eventually.
time. He got my number. We started.
They consummated the
talking.
marriage.
Yes. So anyway, I'll get into more details with that story as time goes on. But that's
It's
just a little
just-
tidbit about
it's
me.
still
That's why
so
I'm in
crazy.
Chicago.
How that even happened. And I
Yeah,
don't even
I
know,
know.
why we picked Chicago. We're probably like, hey, it's close-ish. And I think
Well,
that was
we went
why.
to New York the year before, so they were like, "What's the next great American city we can go to?" Because it's so close to Toronto to just go to Chicago.
By the way,
So-
I was invited. I was just poor and a student.
Right?
so I
Yeah,
couldn't
we
go.
definitely invited Chantel and
Yeah,
honestly,
you
I
were
think
poor for a couple years.
Yeah.
I think
'Cause
Meg and I
you're
were
going
really
through
close
school.
to being like, if we were a little more rich, have more money, we would have just paid for your trip.
Paid for
We wanted
me?
you to
Yeah.
go so
I mean,
bad.
that's how I feel about
But,
anything
yeah.
in life. It's like sometimes it's not about the like tit for tat splitting the hairs. It's like I want to enjoy it a certain way, and if that means I'm paying
Yeah.
for you, and if I can, then I'm going to be paying for you.
Exactly. Like I know sometimes when Chantel was a student, I would bring home ciders because I'm like, well, I want to drink ciders with Chantel, so I will provide the
Yes.
ciders, and she will
Loved
drink
her
with
for
me.
that.
This is friendship. This is just us. And
That's
now
true
now
friendship.
and now
True
that we're
friendship.
older, I mean, obviously I'm not working, but now that we're older, it's like so nice that we can just do this shit and not worry about, okay, well, I can only afford this much. Like we just talk about a budget and we just do it.
Exactly.
Oh my
And
god.
we go over it every time.
You know what? Because YOLO. I'm gonna save up. Because I'm now a saver. But then also I'm like, but what if? Well, what if? So then I'm like, no, I'm
make it
gonna also
bad.
live
You
my
gotta
life.
enjoy
Yeah.
life too. You have a good balance. I think we all do.
Well, now I have no job, so now the balance is all to one side. I have like,
Now the balance is husband.
Well,
Yeah.
we're gonna talk about balance during my episode today. So
if we ever get to it. Okay, let's go.
if we get to it. All right. So obviously Chicago is important to me now. I've been here for a while. Halifax is my hometown, but Chicago is like my
love
second
Chicago.
hometown, my second home, which is also it's called the second city. So it is my second city.
Is that because it burned down?
Is actually because actually there's two theories. One I've been told is because of the Great Chicago Fire, but the other one was because it was rivaling.
That's a tough word, honey. It's okay.
Rivaling
You can do it.
New York City as like the number one city in the U.S. So it was the second
Oh.
city.
Yeah,
So that
I
was
feel
the
like
other
they're
one.
they're always going to be number two because New York, like they've been riding
just
high
can't
for
help
a
it.
long time.
Exactly. So second city, it could have one of two. I've heard both from people from Chicago. So if someone would like, if we could do a vote at some point, we'll figure this out. But those are the two stories I've been told.
I'm gonna make a
We will
note.
do this.
When this comes out. I'm gonna do a poll.
Exactly. What is your opinion? I always go on the Chicago Architectural Boat Tour. Highly recommend.
my
I've gone
God.
with a couple different companies, and sometimes one tour guy will say that. Sometimes another tour guide will say something else.
Do you pipe up and you're like, actually?
No, I'm like, I'm just a Canadian on the boat. I'm like, I'm not stepping in here.
You're like, I'm just
No.
drunk in the back here. I've been on this
Right.
6 times.
Eric is from Chicago. He has every right to step in and put his opinion out there. I feel like I do not, even though I've been here
Fair.
for a long time. Maybe if I get my dual citizenship, then I have more of a stake in the game. But
That's so
Anyway.
weird.
Okay.
so I would like you to go to my first photo. Chicago, if you haven't been here, it's beautiful. We have a beautiful river walk with a lot of history. I was actually walking along the river the other day, and I'm just always in awe, especially on like a nice, beautiful day, like sunny day like it was the other day for me. It just feels like I'm in almost like a dream world. I think it's just so beautiful by the river. The buildings are
Awesome.
so amazing. Yeah, like the architecture in Chicago is beautiful. Being by the Chicago River makes me always feel so lucky that I live in Chicago.
Such a beautiful city. I love
There's
it there.
nothing. There's really nothing it's amazing. So, if you walk along the Chicago River, and if you get to the Clark Street Bridge, you're going to run into this plaque that I'm showing everyone right now. If you're watching on our YouTube, it says the Eastland disaster. While still partially tied to its dock at the river's edge, the excursion steamer Eastland rolled over on the morning of July 24th, 1915. The result was one of the worst maritime disasters in American history. More than 800 people lost their lives within a few feet of the shore. The Eastland was filled to overflowing with picnic-bound Western Electric Company employees and their families when the tragedy occurred. Investigations following the disaster raised questions about the ship's seaworthiness and inspection of the Great Lakes steamers in general. And this was erected by the Eastland Disaster Historical Society.
They were heading to a company picnic.
Yes.
And the boat.
So I'm going to
rolled.
go into all of this stuff, but I wanted to give you a upfront. This is what we're in for today.
Damn, man. I
Did you
was
take
not
this photo?
expecting this.
I did.
Oh, nice. Credit.
Yes, I took
Betsy.
this photo. I know. I was like, sometimes the newer photos, you never know who owns them. So I'm like, I can take my own photo.
And it looks like it was a very nice day when you went. It looks like it's very sunny on that one side.
I was not lying. It was nice and sunny, beautiful day. And I
Holy
walked
shit,
along the river.
800 people, though. That is just like,
Over 800. 844 to be
and
exact.
families? Did you read that right?
Yes. So we're going to get into all the details. I'm going to go backtrack a little bit from the 1915 disaster to talk a little bit about the SS Eastland. This is the ship behind the whole thing. So I'm going to take us back to 1902 when the Michigan Steamship Company wanted to start making some money off the two major industries in this area at the time, which was tourism and agriculture. So Chicago, if you don't know, is situated on Lake Michigan. And
That I knew.
lots of farms in Michigan. And basically, people will make a lot of money by taking boats across the lake, gathering agriculture, bringing it back to the city. And there was also a big tourism aspect because people in the city wanted to sometimes leave the city and people not in the city wanted to visit the city. So that was two big sources of income in that area. So there was a man named, he's actually Canadian, Robert R. Blacker, and he wanted to commission a ship to compete with the other main company at the time, the South Haven Line. And as kind of what we assume is to spite them, he wanted to call his ship the City of South Haven to take their name from that.
I mean, like, that's
What a
really
dick
shitty.
move. I love it.
I know.
I
It's really
know.
smart, though. I feel like there was hardly any rules and, like, no laws back then for this kind of
Yeah,
shit.
like the
No
Wild
laws
West, right?
whatsoever.
Yeah, what is it?
I
the
mean, there
Wild
were,
West.
but whoever made
Everyone
their
had
ship
guns
first,
on their hips. They were, yeah,
pretty much.
dueling with swords.
So
I
they,
feel like you're mixing up two different, like, time periods.
I mean, we're in the Midwest, so I get it.
Guys, my weed oil's kicking in, okay? Who knows what's going to come out my mouth? All right.
Oh, thank God we have no sponsors yet. Otherwise, it's like pulled, banned, cut.
One day we'll be professional.
No,
No.
I refuse.
We'll have sponsors, but we better still be able to say whatever we want.
We'll be sponsored by really good weed oil. That's fine.
There's actually a company that I found, and I may have shared this with one of you, but it's called like Whale Tail Gin. And I was like,
Oh, I know that
"That's-
gin.
Oh,
Yeah.
Is
Is it from Nova
Didn't I
Scotia?
buy you a gin?
Yeah,
like
you
that,
did.
Chantal. Yeah, I think so.
I can't
Anytime I
remember.
see gin that
pretty
has
sure-
anything nautical on the bottle, I usually buy it for Chantal.
I
if
bought
can.
Chantel a purple gin. I forget what the purple element was, but I'm like, well, that makes sense.
There's gray
I
whale
always
gin.
gin always
Gray
has
whale.
really good.
That
Oh,
must be it.
there's gray whale gin. You got me the Nova Scotia one, and it has the girl on it, and it was a blue
The
bottle. And it was
mermaid
really
type,
beautiful. Yes.
yeah.
Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It was just one of those bottles where I'm like,
Had to.
Chantal
Yeah.
needs this. It was no question.
Yeah.
So.
When we can find like a, j-in.com, buy us a gin rather than a coffee, that'll be our, sponsor.
Buy us a shot.
Buy me a shot. Okay.
Oh, we all need it.
Okay, back
So,
to this nightmare.
Back to the story. So the Michigan Steamship Company, it leaked a little bit to the South Haven line that they were trying to make this ship and call it their name. So then there was a competition of who was going to build their ship first. The Michigan Steamship Company used Jenks Shipbuilding Company, and they commissioned them to build the ship. And it was 265 feet long. And originally the ship was designed well. But there were some different changes that were made that started to put its integrity into question.
Was it like Exhibit
So-
Hit My Ride? Then all of a sudden the weight was way off or something.
Well, so like I said, the
Can't
main
even push it over
thing
the edge.
for the company's motive for building the ship was to make money, right?
Yeah.
They wanted to get into agriculture and tourism, so they had
And
really lofty
no
goals for this
corners
ship.
were cut. I'm sure it was all
None.
none.
Corners
Yes.
are never cut in building things
in
ever.
business.
One interesting part about this was the design of the ballast tanks. Do you know what those are?
It sounds familiar, but
Yeah, I
for
feel like
those
you've
that
talked about it
for those
before.
that don't know, why don't you explain it?
I will.
Yeah.
So it's tanks that are in the bottom of a ship that can take on or take away water to help with the weight
Balance?
distribution
Oh.
and also balance, and also just how low it is in the water. So for example, if it doesn't have any cargo, you might want to put some water in because then it won't
So
be
it's
so
not-
high up in
okay.
the water.
The visual now I can see and it makes sense in my head.
Right.
Because obviously if it's very, very not light, ships aren't light, but if it's higher up and then maybe it's bad weather, more likely
Yeah.
because then it's kind of top heavy.
Exactly. So we don't want ships to be
Dr.
too
Phil.
top heavy. So
But women,
these tanks were
that's
actually
fine.
that's fine with it's fine
That's
with ladies,
fine.
but
Or bottom heavy, whatever you got.
What
But,
if you're
yeah.
both? Then what?
that's also
Then you are perfect.
You heard it here.
and if you were neither, like some of
Still,
us.
You're also
still
perfect.
Still perfect. If I could share, I would. A little, just maybe a little. I wish.
Just give me a little right here down here.
You froze, but I assume. Oh, you want butt?
Oh, yeah. got
But
it.
but big boobs,
Yeah.
we're the ideal places, I guess, according to Western standards of beauty. Okay,
And also for my standards of beauty.
I want to be beautiful to Megan.
Oh, you already are.
Goal. This life goals.
Already are.
So these tanks were designed. It was basically half and half, a starboard and port side, but they filled all the way to the middle. So I'm not sure how they normally design, but apparently this design kind of would make it so if they weren't full, they could slosh around and kind of still make a boat uneven. So there were some issues going
That
on
doesn't
with the
seem smart.
design.
So like we put something in so it won't be uneven, but it makes
It
the
could
boat
be uneven. Right.
So
But that's
Math.
that's fine, right? Can you sign off on this? It's a long weekend. I gotta get going.
So, unfortunately, the Michigan Steamship Company lost the battle of building the boat first, and
Yikes.
the South Haven line took their name. But
That's just
they had
so
a
cool.
competition to name their boat, which the winner will receive $10 and unlimited passages for the summer, I think. So they
Whoa.
decided to name.
what
the
is
ship
that
after
$10
this.
now?
I actually have my inflation calculator handy. So
Oh,
really?
I'll do it.
That's amazing.
I knew I didn't calculate ever. I had $311.
That's not bad. That's nothing. I'll do it.
To me,
Nothing to
it's
sneeze at.
it's
and
more
for,
like the
but free trips.
Yeah.
The free
And
trips.
Can
Right.
you imagine if you're like dating someone, you're just like you want to just go like to Chicago
Want
for
to go
the
on
day?
the boat that I have
Yeah.
free access to? No problem.
Like it's not my boat. I would never say that, but like
Yeah.
I named it.
I would
You know,
allude to the
Exactly.
fact that it was my
named
boat.
this boat.
Yeah, so would I. I'd walk on. I'd be like handshaking everybody, and they're like, "Who the fuck is that?" It's like, it's fine.
Welcome aboard. Welcome aboard.
Yes. All right, let me continue because we're already
Sorry.
I know. I'm so sorry.
Okay. So it was launched in 1903. When it first launched, it immediately started listing, which, as we might have known from earlier, it means it's leaning
That's bad.
45 degrees, but it
Holy
manages to right itself
shit.
after launch.
I'd be shitting.
Another issue
Shitting
we've
milk.
already encountered with with the boat is the gangways are fairly low. The gangways are where you have those ramps to get into the boat.
Oh,
That's what a
okay.
gangway
Okay.
is. So they're kind of low. Sometimes at boarding, they're only a foot above the water where the passengers are loading. So very low. When I say low, they're low. You can look at the photo of the ship. I assume this is when it's like, I don't know, not
as
at
full.
full capacity. Because you can see I think those are the gangway ports there, but they seem higher out of the
That
water.
reminds
Okay,
me
yeah.
of the Titanic, that scene. Like, remember when they're on the dock and I'm like, oh, it's going to the middle. I guess, when you're young, you assume you walk onto the top deck.
Onto
That
the
would-
top. I know.
That would make no
but
sense.
it's- Right.
And is
You
that
also
the
see there's
water
little-
pouring out?
Yeah, I was just going to say, you can see
Oh.
like that's one of like the ballast tanks probably like taking water out
Okay.
at that point. So
It already looks kind of scary.
Well, I mean, it's from the
actually, this, to be
1903,
fair,
so
this wasn't the original photo. It was
Okay.
originally dark green at the bottom and it was painted white later on. But I was trying to find a photo of that and I could have spent more time, but it didn't come up on 2 searches, and I was like, you know what? Screw it.
It's not in the first 2 pages of Google. I'm not looking for it.
You also don't want to see it. Like, don't ever go past the first 2 pages.
Right, exactly. It was on a YouTube video I watched about it, and I was like, oh, that's cool, but I didn't want to. It's easier to take a picture than try to do a screenshot video, and
Fair.
Anyway, so it was originally green, but it ended up being white like this. All right, so as it started its main voyages, it was a little bit too slow for its owners, who wanted it to be at 22 knots, which is, I think, roughly around, equivalent to 22 miles per hour, give or take.
Yeah, I remember looking that up before. It's like really
right. I think it's very
different.
comparable.
Yeah.
It's already gone, though. I don't.
Right. It also didn't have much luck when it first launched either. It accidentally sunk a tugboat at one point. It was also starting to list 10 degrees because the ballast tanks, like we already mentioned, weren't the best.
This is like a discount.
So it had a few other issues too. They ended up replacing the captain, and they asked the Jank shipbuilding company to do some modifications to we need to increase the speed for one, because we want to make more money. And we also want some air conditioning because it's hot. And so they did this. They added air conditioning, which added some weight to the
Did they
top.
add it all to one side?
They added it, I think it was all fans and stuff at the top of the ship. And they also changed the draft of the ship, which is the hull shape. So that way it'd be go through water faster, I guess.
Okay.
So all these changes, well, maybe a little more top heavy, made the ship faster, which is what they wanted. And the ship earned the name the Speed Queen of the Great Lakes. So that was her nickname.
I feel like that company made the names. Like, I hear they're calling it the Speed Queen of the Great Lakes. Did you hear that? There's no way.
They're like, ooh.
This is also just flashback to Titanic. Like, it's so fast. Oh, I can go faster.
Okay.
More coal,
We're
faster.
the Titanic plays a huge part in this story. So we're going
Okay.
Guys, we're just obsessed with the Titanic. Maybe it's
I know.
because it came out, we were like 10 years old, but I have never stopped. The Titanic,
the first movie I saw.
The Titanic is my Roman Empire.
It's
Exactly.
it's almost like we have a podcast about ocean shit and Titanic,
I mean,
Titanic just comes
is
to
the
Maybe we
most
should just call
famous
ourselves
ship from the
Titanic
ocean.
Files.
I know.
Yes.
I feel like we're kind of pigeonholing ourselves, but anyway, I'm open to it. I'm open to it.
Yeah. This story just happens to strongly relate to the Titanic. So,
Okay.
but we won't get to that yet. Very soon. We're at 1904.
Okay.
So 1904 was the first major listing that the ship encountered where passengers were like, we're scared. What's going on? It tilted between 15 and 25 degrees. So you can imagine on your ship and you're like,
Okay,
Thank
now
you.
I'm not an
It's
expert.
like a sail ship.
but furniture
right. But on a
would slide.
steamer, like a
No, you
huge,
don't want that.
almost, 260 foot long steamship, you don't expect that. You kept
No, no, no.
kind of. Yeah.
Lindsay, you may have already said this, but how long back then anyway was the trip from dock to dock?
Dock to dock. Well, it depends where it was going. So,
But is this like a day charter or
yeah, it would be it would do overnights around the lake and stuff like that. It would go at one point I was going all the way to Ohio, so going through the Great Lakes.
so are you having a room with a bed or just
Some did. Yeah, they had some
Okay.
cabins about to have up to 500 people originally with nighttime
So
accommodation.
if you're doing okay. I'm just because if you're in your bed and the ship is tilting and shit's moving around, I feel like my soul would leave my body and I would just I guess I'm gonna die.
This
I would
amount of
panic.
list, this isn't normal.
Yeah,
This is excessive. Boats are going to do that a little bit, but having this much is quite noticeable. You wouldn't be able to walk very well, type of thing. So
have nightmares
to deal with this first major issue, they decided to remove a bunch of the cabins, and but they end up adding a couple more lifeboats instead. So they kind of did some different retrofitting to the Eastland. Overall, though, they only had enough lifeboats for 5% of the people on board. Just
Where
putting a
we
note
that
there
before?
because we're gonna get to that too.
Great.
Okay.
So did the Titanic learn nothing from this boat?
Oh, don't even.
Okay.
Just wait a minute. We're gonna get
just
there.
triggered Lindsay because she has all the facts and we're just jumping
Yes.
ahead.
Okay.
Yes, you're gonna be shocked how the Titanic contributed to this accidentally. Okay.
Oh, right.
funny little story though about the Eastland before we get into like a lot of the sad stuff. Is it had this little like steam whistle, like it's called a calliope. It's like it comes like a carnival music like it was like
Okay. I love it already.
so it had like, but people could like play with it. So it was in the same room where like all the men were like drinking and stuff. So it got so annoying that Chicago banned them from using it anywhere between 3 miles of the city.
That's funny. I love that.
Yeah.
We would do that. We would have kicked off a spell.
Yeah. Yeah. They were like, all right, we're done with this whistle.
Yeah, with our palomas in the back, just like
The
whistling.
most annoying whistle. Yeah.
And now no one gets a whistle. You see? You see what you've done? You've ruined it for everybody.
Exactly. All right. So 1906, it almost tips over in the Chicago River. But the crew is able to kind of get it back on track. But it's like severely listing. So it's having problems. In 1909, it is sold to the Eastland Navigation Company. And what they did was remove more cabins to try to deal with this listing thing, which was sometimes at 30 degrees.
It sounds terrifying.
I'm going to throw up.
Yes. All right. Now we're going to get to the Titanic, because what happens with the Titanic greatly impacts this story. So in 1912, April 14th, the Titanic hits an iceberg. 15th, it sinks. After this disaster, the public are outraged, of course. And the major thing that comes up was a lack of lifeboats in the Titanic. The Titanic at the time, though, had more lifeboats than required.
Which is like bonkers because
And
do
this
the math.
is-
That makes
Right.
no sense.
But think about it this way. So the reason they didn't have full capacity of lifeboats is, one, they knew that probably not everyone would get to them in time.
Okay.
And
that's not.
And adding that much weight to a top of the ship would potentially cause issues with the ship. So it wasn't always like a we don't care about lives thing. It was more of a what's the likely, it was like a business decision. What's the likelihood of everyone being able to get on the lifeboat? What's the likelihood of everyone of the like lifeboats deploying in a certain amount of time? They've looked at other disasters where ships sank in like matter of minutes. Like how fast the USS Indianapolis sank.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes ships sink so fast that they're like, well, adding too much weight to the deck might make things worse for the ship versus having more lifeboats. So it wasn't, I'm agreeing with you. Like it doesn't, like when you think about it, everyone should have a seat on the lifeboat. And because of the Titanic, that was exactly what people started like lobbying for. When you think about it though, a lot of Titanic's lifeboats were not full when they deployed. A lot of times the crew weren't properly trained, and they thought if we fill these lifeboats up, we're not going to get them out in time, or they're going to like break our pulleys or something. So there were lots of different factors going on. Plus people were getting trapped below because people were afraid of like, people going crazy.
Yeah. I mean, like it's all very messed up, but it's one of those things where it's like if you can only have X amount of lifeboats for X amount of people, but then you say that the capacity of the boat is twice that. It's like then that's the problem. Then,
but I would argue too, yes, like if you were on the boat knowing you had a seat, maybe you would be less panicky. But so you could have different arguments, but essentially they've determined that ultimately having more lifeboats in the Titanic would not have saved everyone. You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, they were also sending lifeboats half full. Like there was a lot of things
people
that
were scared, and no one and lifeboats could have gone back to get more people, and they didn't. So there's lots of factors at play. But anyway, this outcry over the Titanic sparked adding this as a major political issue. So there was a committee started in the UK that basically passed legislation that everyone on board should have a seat on a lifeboat, and that was a requirement. But in the US, it ended up going under the Seamen's Act, and they decided that because of the reasons I already told you,
we're children.
You just said semen
on the podcast.
We're gonna get canceled for sure.
Yes. Well, you joke now because once I get to the sad stuff, there'll be no jokes, and then we'll get something later.
We'll still try.
So I'm sandwiching. I'm sandwiching.
Okay, you're sandwiching the sadness. Got it.
Yeah, I'm sandwiching it. Okay. So they passed the act that there must be enough for 75% of the passengers.
That's still weird.
So that was
I
the
totally
act
get it.
in the
It's
US.
still like it feels yucky.
Funny enough, though, or ironic enough, there was a man named A.A. Chance who was from Chicago who protested this new legislation from the Titanic. And it was because he was concerned about boats being too top heavy that weren't able to carry it. So he didn't want boats just suddenly taking all these extra lifeboats on top, making them unstable. So,
which I totally get.
And then more likely to sink.
But when the St. Joseph's Chicago Steamship Company was asking for recommendations from him of what ship to buy, he had recommended the Eastland. Maybe he didn't
know what he's
I don't
about.
know. I don't know. But
I don't know if I trust
it
his
was just a little
Sit
bit.
down, sir.
Okay. So more changes were made to the ship after the laws were passed. So the lifeboat count was increased from 6 to 11 boats. They also made sure there was enough flotation devices, like life jackets for everyone, and there were extra flotation devices added. This made about 14 to 15 tons of extra weight on top of the ship.
Holy moly.
Right.
I was actually
They
excited
also-
when you said more
I know.
flotation stuff, but now I'm like,
I know. But they also, another thing they did was they were trying to make the ship look a little prettier.
yeah.
So they pulled up some flooring and they poured concrete on some of the flooring on the top.
What?
Yeah.
So like don't give extra lifeboats, but pour concrete.
Right.
Okay.
Some very
Just
poor
making sure I'm
decisions
hearing
were-
that math.
Right. We're being made here.
Mhm.
All right. So we're going to get to our next photo, which is a little advertisement for the Western Electric Company. This was a company based in Chicago. The Hawthorne plant was their major plant where they had 15,000 employees. This was a company, I think, owned by AT&T. And what they did was they made electronics like telephones and things like that. So back then, families didn't really get employees didn't really get time off like we do now. Basically, this was the highlight of their year in many ways because they got a day off with their families. It was a big deal.
You're making it so bad.
And
Lindsay.
it was also like, if you were single, like say you're like in your early 20s, you're looking for someone because you don't want to be like, a spinster in like a year.
God forbid.
You're looking for someone. And this is the great time. Like a lot of singles were looking to mingle at this event. So it was a very big event. It was very important for the company employees. And they often brought their families and things like this to this event. This was the 5th annual event, and it was the biggest one yet. So 7,000 tickets were sold for $1 or 75 cents if you bought them in advance, which wasn't really cheap for the time because people made like $17 a week.
Holy.
So that's it, but it was, very worth it for them. Like everyone wanted to be on this.
And
picnic.
assuming that like they provided the food and stuff, like they were providing the picnic portion.
I don't know that part actually.
Let's just say yes.
let's assume.
because-
yeah,
They're paying
You
for
know
their
what?
plane.
yeah. They would be taking them to Michigan City in Indiana, and it's this huge park there called Washington Park. So it's just beautiful, I guess. And like there's like also like kind of carnival stuff there, and like you could eat and
So let's just
and
assume that
just
they were
enjoy
going to pay
life.
for everything and you're buying your ticket because otherwise it's just so bleak.
maybe. I mean, also might be like the time where it's like, all right, if you go to eat out, it's like $1. I don't know. I don't know how much it would cost to eat out for something
Fair
like that.
days.
But anyway, let's say that they got treated well. But either way, they had to buy their tickets, and the company rented out 5 different boats to transport people there because it's 7,000 people, right? And this was about 38 miles away, so it's just easier to take the ship, dock it, and drop off the employees. So, this was the first ship to leave would be the SS Eastland, and people wanted to get there as soon as possible because you get one day off, right?
Mm-hmm.
One day of fun. So around 6:30 a.m. on July 24th in 1915, this is when the first passenger started to arrive. So we had about
Jesus.
Yeah, I know. Eric and I
There's
were
no
talking about
way.
this last night, and he's like, "Well, I wouldn't be up that early."
No,
Plus,
and
I
like
probably
I'm
wouldn't have been
Eric,
up
we
an
know.
early riser. I'm an early riser, but I'm not like at the boat at 6. I'm like probably halfway there, maybe, but like that's freaking early. And
You're like, I'll
speaking
take
of
the
kids,
second one.
Yeah, like I want time to have a coffee first.
I know. I mean, I don't know if
Yeah.
But
All
to
of
be
these
fair, if
workers-
it's your one day off, you're probably
Yeah.
pretty, like she said, pretty keen to get there.
A lot of the employees too, I should mention, were immigrants from like a lot of them from Eastern Europe, and so this was probably like a luxury to them too. So like putting that in perspective, like what they might have had in
This
their
makes
life,
it so much worse.
It's gonna get bad. I'm sorry.
God.
This part's gonna get bad. So 6:30 a.m. About 5,000 people are already ready to go. They're excited, even though the Eastland itself can only take up to 2,500 people. So whoever gets there first come first serve, I guess. So they start to board, and it is starting to rain. So some people decide to go below deck to get out of the rain. From 6:41 to 6:53 a.m., the Eastland starts to list towards starboard because so many people are getting on the starboard side. So
And they're
I
at the
should
dock
mention that
still? They
They're at
haven't
the
even left
dock.
yet?
No, they haven't left. They're at the dock, and the ship is starboard side on the dock. Boarding, like I said, is starting to weigh down that starboard side. The crew uses the ballast tanks to start to balance things out. So they add some water into the port side, and it straightens out, and things seem to be okay. Between 7 and 7:05, there's over 1,000 people on the ship at this point, and they're boarding at a rate of 50 people per minute. So it's pretty fast.
Jesus.
Damn.
At this point, there
minute?
starts to be yeah. I think there's multiple gangways too. So
Are they
Okay, that makes
running
sense. Yeah.
onto the ship
Yeah.
though? Like, my God.
well, I'm not sure how many gangways there were. I didn't.
We saw one on the
See that, but-
photos, but there,
Right, it looked like there was at least 3 or 4.
One,
so like, you
two.
think about
there could be even 5 actually.
yeah. So
two-
there's
two in the
multiple
middle.
gangways. So I will
Yeah.
say that it's not like every 50 people are like,
Into
but it's
one-
fast, and they want to get moving fast. So like they
I
They're being quick
totally
about
get that. Like, you want your trip to start as soon as
Yeah.
possible.
Mm-hmm.
But at this point, even though people are boarding, it starts to list to the port side, so away from the dock. So maybe this is because the ballast tank's starting to fill up and people are starting to like move over.
I hate it.
Okay. 7:10, the ship reaches its maximum of 2,500 people and the boarding stops. The gangplanks are being prepared to be taken in, and the passengers are asked to like redistribute on the ship. But it's hard because the decks are already kind of slippery. It's a little bit like uneven, and it's raining, so light rain, but still they're wet.
Mm-hmm.
So the port list is starting to increase. So they decide to open the starboard ballast tanks to start to
Let water in.
put it back the other way.
Yeah.
Exactly. But this doesn't happen right away. So it takes several minutes for the water to start going into those tanks. So between 7:16 and 7:20, the port list is starting to get really bad, like to the point where the port side gangways are taking in water.
Okay,
Yeah.
that can't be helpful.
It finally, the starboard side ballast tanks were starting to get some water, but now the listing is at 10 to 15 degrees on the port side.
And it's full of people. Oh my God.
It is, yes. But do you have to remember too, like the crew of this ship are used to this happening with this boat.
Mm-hmm.
It's happened many times before. So at this point, they're not even that worried. Like, the
Phased,
captain
yeah.
isn't that worried. The chief
They're
engineer
like, it'll sort itself
being like,
out.
well, we're doing what we have to do for this. Like, we know we have like a beater, so we just gotta
We got
kick it into
protocol.
gear. So right, like it just I don't think they were that worried.
Yeah.
Right, because I've had the reputation the ship had, and it's always been okay in the past.
My stomach is in knots, and like I know it's gonna happen.
I know. So the starboard tanks start to take in some water, and the ship starts to right itself, although it's still kind of listing to the port. The gangplanks are taken in, and they're like, you know what? It's starting to go back. We're good. Like once we start, the captain I think thought like once they started moving too, like people would distribute, like things would be okay, and then
It's like
we'll
a
be- we'll
bicycle.
be
You
good.
gotta balance out. Everything's
Exactly.
fine.
I think that's probably what he thought. So between 7:23 and 7:25, the Eastland is starting to prepare to leave the dock, and it starts to drift out a little bit. And the passengers on the starboard side are starting to redistribute themselves. They're starting to kind of move around, and which means some are probably going more to the port. At 7:27, passengers are asked to move back to the starboard side because the list to port is starting to increase.
If it's that
But
delicate,
a lot of them
like,
can't. I
this makes
know,
me
but
so
a lot of them
upset.
can't move still because it's slippery. Like some sources I saw said they didn't want to move. I'm like, I think it's probably more like probably couldn't move. Plus there's people below decks too. Like, I don't know how you're communicating this, but it's all happening very fast. 7:28 a.m. The list increases to 45 degrees. So at this
Bye.
point, dishes falling, piano sliding. There's a lot of furniture like sliding, and it's actually hitting people. There was one big fridge that trapped two women and like crushed them at this point.
Jesus.
Water is now pouring into the portside gangways, and things are getting really bad really fast. So between 7:28 and 7:30, the Eastland slowly rolls onto portside and rests at 20 feet in the water, about 6 meters into the Chicago River. So it's basically in its side, it's half submerged, pretty much, in the Chicago River, because the Chicago River is not deep.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So at this point, people on the wharf hear screams. There's so many people trapped inside the ship at this point. A lot of children too. How do they get out at this point? Some people were lucky enough to be on the top deck and were able to jump into the water, but a lot of them couldn't swim. So a lot of times even if they could maybe swim a little bit, they're not dressed for swimming. It's 1915. The women are wearing long dresses. The men are wearing all these like suits. It's just panic. A lot of these people do not know how to swim.
And there was
Some
also
people
no
managed
time to even say like, oh, here's the life jacket, here's that. Within a few minutes,
there was no
it's all-
time to deploy any life jackets. So you can look at my next photo. That's the Eastland on its port side in the Chicago
Oh my
River.
God.
It looks like more than halfway submerged, Lindsay.
It maybe probably is. Yeah, I've seen the diagrams where it can vary a little bit, but yeah, it looks a
Holy crap.
little more. So you see all the people standing on top of it. Some people
Yeah.
were lucky enough to kind of get over on the side.
AKA on its side.
Right,
and-
or go
and
through
just-
some of the portholes on the starboard
and
side, because that's the side
Obviously,
they were on.
your plaque is there for a reason, because if you go back to your first photo, that is exactly where it happened. 'cause
Exactly
that
where it
building-
was.
That is
Yeah.
like, I have chills.
Yeah. The bridge you see in the distance is no longer, the original one is no longer there, but there's still a bridge there too.
But that building in the back, I'm like, that's the same
Yeah.
building. That's
That's the Reed
insane.
Murdoch building, and we're going to talk about that in a
Okay.
bit.
That is so
you see
upsetting
all the
to
people at the
see.
wharf, and people were trying to help the people in the water by throwing like
Ropes and
wooden
stuff.
crates and things like that. Sometimes those would hit the people though and knock them unconscious. And they
Oh
would
my
drown, trying to
God.
help. I know. Can you imagine? You're trying to like throw something to someone to save them, and ultimately it kills them.
Well, you mentioned that they're like, especially the women are in like layers and layers.
Yeah, like
do you
I'm
ever
a
try to
strong swimmer, but if I try to swim with all that stuff on, I don't know.
Even
If
if
I
you're
Yeah.
swimming like
Right?
with the t-shirt, all that moving
Yeah.
fabric, like that's challenging. And these women have like multiple layers and big skirts, and
yeah.
it's just
Yeah,
bad.
it's not easy to swim with clothes on. So you can see the scene here. There's boats coming in to help. There was a tugboat that came to assist that ended up making kind of like a bridge between the dock and the Eastland to try to like help people like go across, grab victims, bring them back to the shore. A lot of people were in that area, and to like, you know, the crowd did work hard around them to try to save people as much as they could. There were actually some nurses in the area that were like really key to relief efforts.
Nurses always are.
Oh, I forget the name of one now. Her name was like Helen or something. But these nurses came and they were like, all right, no, you go here. I need these supplies. I need you to do, like, they delegated a lot to help with the relief efforts. And welders were being called to like open up the ship and try to like pull people out who were like inside. So one family, if you go to the next photo, was a family that had boarded the ship and they had gone below deck, and miraculously, being on the starboard side, they end up surviving. So you'll see the lady kind of standing in the middle. Her name is Borghild Amelia Anstad, and she was one of the survivors with her family. So her little sister, her mother, and her uncle all survived by being, you know, they were trapped and they could see like out the porthole, and they're like, well, we can't get there. And luckily she knew how to swim, and they were able to pull her and her whole family out of the ship.
Oh my God, that's just so lucky, because like
Yeah.
this whole family lived, and I'm sure many whole families didn't live.
Well, 22 families were completely gone because of this disaster.
Fuck, man, that's
I know. Yeah. You can imagine it's like being on the wharf and it's like people are screaming. It's like you try to help them, but you can't help all these people trapped. They're like,
well, and it's
death
like
trap.
it's one of those things too. Like too many people make it even harder sometimes. Like if there's
right.
Especially that many people like freaking out. Like it's so hard
people
to
are
give order
trapped
to
from
chaos like that.
furniture and people are on top of them and they're in the
I didn't
water.
think
So it's
about
like,
all the furniture. Like
right. So
holy
everything's
shit.
on top. So even if they could swim, if you can't escape, you're in like a death trap and they only have minutes to save them and they can't do it. So
Jesus Christ.
a fact about her though, her grandchildren end up starting the Eastland Disaster Historical Society, which is where a lot of my information from today came from. So
Thank you.
I thought that was
Yeah.
really interesting.
That's really, it's just so sad, but I mean, it's great that like someone who was involved is
Right.
taking
Right.
ownership.
So a descendant. Yeah. So
Wow.
844 people die, many of them children, and of the passengers, 228 were teenagers, 58 were infants or young children, and altogether 70% of the people who died were under age 25. So like I said, remember I said a lot of people were going to like kind of mingle and stuff and meet people, like they're young single people are probably on the ship.
Like they went to find a date.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, like the average age of those who died was only 23, so it's a lot of young people
Oh
who
my
died.
God.
Not to say it's sad if old people die too, but you know, it's just
No,
so
it's-
tragic
yeah,
when you think
it's
of all the
different.
children.
I
and,
think that
like,
everyone would agree that,
yeah,
you know, the loss of life is never good. But when someone
Right.
is, God, in your
So
20s,
fresh in their life.
haven't even started
Like,
living.
yeah.
Like you're probably
Your
just,
frontal
I
lobe
know.
isn't even formed yet. Like you
yeah,
haven't.
and you think you're gonna have like the most fun day with your parents, or you know, meet that special person, and yeah,
fuck, that's bad. This is terrible.
I know.
Hot take. Hot
I'm-
take. This is
It's
really
terrible.
depressing.
I'm gonna try to reel it back in a little bit at the end,
but
but
sometimes
it's
like
really
it's not even about making it light at the end. It's just like I had never even heard of
It's-
this.
I know, and it's the worst. I looked up other disasters in Chicago's history. Like, this is definitely the biggest by death toll, and the fact that it's not more well known. But again, a lot of people attribute that to the fact that, you know, something like the Titanic, so many like well-known,
International
wealthy people
too.
were on there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas something like the Eastland, it was a lot of immigrant families. So, you know, it
You know,
just
it's
didn't get that.
Funny how that
same
hasn't changed at
edit.
all in terms of the news. Like
Right, exactly. It's like people don't care. Like I barely heard about the ship where there was a ton of immigrants that died recently, right?
well,
But
it was around
you
the
know-
same time as that stupid fucking Ocean Gate submarine. There was like a boat of like 40 people. I think they were trying to get to Greece, and they were all
Yes,
from like
yeah.
West Africa. Obviously, I don't even know the details. I block it out because, you know, my mental health. It's a lot.
Yeah.
And it was all within like the same couple of days, and that whole
Yeah.
ship of 40 people just disappeared, and yet people are focused on 3 billionaires and that one
Yeah.
innocent teenager, but she never should have been there. But
I know.
yeah, but like the stories haven't changed. Like this is over 100 years ago.
Right. It's the same thing with
It's the same.
this. But I'm really glad that, you know, in Chicago there is, you know, the Eastland
kind of-
Disaster Historical Society that does they make sure that the memory of the Eastland and its victims doesn't disappear. And there's
Yeah.
there's a really good exhibit in the Chicago History Museum. They have different things from the Eastland as well.
We have to
I was
go
gonna
there
try to
next
go
time.
back there again before I saw it before when I was there last year, but I didn't have time to go back ahead of my episode to get more pictures. But
Well, when we're in
I think
Chicago
I'll
next
take you.
time-
I'll take you.
We'll forgive
yeah.
you this time.
because we've already
Okay,
talked
thank
about
you.
doing like little like case updates.
Yeah.
You know, if anything ever
Yeah.
comes up, so we can go to the museum, take photos of the
Yes,
exhibits
we
and stuff,
will.
and-
We will definitely do that.
for sure.
So the St. Joseph Chicago Steamship Company is the company that owned the Eastland. Didn't have any money really to compensate its victims. So Western Electric, the company of the employees, put up $100K, which is about $3 million today. Red Cross had a ton of donations, and even the citizens of Chicago donated $200,000, which is equivalent to $6.2 million today. That's just from the people in Chicago.
That's
so
amazing.
It was really nice. Yeah, the city I think really came together. Like a lot of people, like I think there was like even baseball games, like where they're donating the proceeds. Like the city seemed to come together, and the businesses in the city came together to, you know, do what they could, I guess, for the victims.
Just I
But,
couldn't
you know,
imagine
there's-
like you have a family member that moves to Chicago from, you know, from somewhere like Eastern Europe, wherever it is, and then that whole line is now just gone.
Yeah.
Like that's just
It's,
wow.
I can't even imagine. So
No, let's not, because it's already so
yeah,
bad.
I know. The Great Lakes Towing Company was called in to help raise the ship. So they ended up removing the funnels and things like that to help raise it. Took a while.
It's full of water now. Like,
Right. They just had to slowly take it out of the water because it can't just sit there forever. And they move it, you know, out of the river, and it sat vacant for about a year. Meanwhile, Captain Peterson, he was the captain, and the chief engineer Erickson, as well as 4 other officers, were charged with multiple counts of negligence for a criminal and civil trial. The federal government decided to take on the case since it was technically, the river is technically federal waters, and some of the regulations involved in, like, you know, the lifeboat situation. Very ironic that a law put in place to save lives actually in this case took lives.
well, the
So
ship.
Well, I mean, that or the cement. Like,
And yeah, they just, there was a lot of bad decisions, but this immediate,
I like,
this
was it
just
in this
added,
one? Was
right?
it the lifeboats, or was it the fact that they put
Yeah.
cement in the bottom?
How
Sorry.
many rock gardens
On the
did they
top.
I'm
have
not. I'm
on the
not.
top?
I'm not ever gonna let you convince me that it was the lifeboats alone. Like,
So did
No,
the captain
this,
like
the
live?
concrete floor. He did. He died in like the 30s, but
That's
you know,
fucked
he was
up, though.
obviously, I guess people like kind of attacked him and stuff because he was like,
I mean, I would attack
you
him
know,
too.
he made some bad decisions for sure. The engineer seemed, actually, I didn't, I saw a picture of him, I didn't get it, but like he went from being like young and handsome, and in 3 years he was just like completely, looked like he had almost like cancer. I think he died from
That's called
heart
stress,
attack or
ladies and
something.
gentlemen.
Right. He got so stressed over this. And it didn't sound like, you know, from what I've heard, like it was really, you know, anything he could have done per se, but
It's
you
just
know,
a
you're
bunch
trying
of
to
things
just
that were not
deal with
right.
the ship you have, right? He ended up dying just 3 years later, Erickson, the engineer. And
Like, did he die natural?
yeah, he had a heart conditions, but he was like young, right? Because it's just
Well,
the stress of this
it's-
just took a toll on him.
Yeah. Fuck, man.
Peterson also tried to throw him under the bus, which really, like, all these calls were kind of on him to make. And like, why were you trying to, like, you think you're gonna just leave like when this is happening to the ship? Again, you know, maybe he thought that was just normal for the ship, but it was still a lot of poor decisions being made. And maybe you bore people slower, maybe you know, especially if your boat has this problem. So
Well, and also, I know that, you know, 2,500 people is a lot. Did they have any
Right.
time to say, okay, everyone, you know, this is where the life jackets are, this is that? Because I've only been on a cruise once, but like,
I don't think they did that because there's just no possible way between, like, you know, 6:30 and 7:30.
because you were
with
saying
all this
like,
going
and then in
on,
these
like,
3 minutes this happened, and in these 2 minutes this happened. So like, even if
Yeah.
something were, you know, like obviously a terrible disaster happened,
yeah,
but part of it should be, okay, before we go, announcements, this is where the exits are, this is like, but 100 years ago, maybe that wasn't stuff that they even thought about.
I don't think they definitely, I didn't hear mention of that in the sources I used, so I don't think they really did. Maybe people just knew, like, all right, the lifeboat's on the top deck, oh duh, but like, you know, I
The
don't
ship
know
is
if they,
unsinkable.
I don't think they weren't planning on being in the water, that's for sure. Like, they just, mom can't swim,
not in
or
that
anything,
way.
so.
They were in the
No.
water. They weren't planning on being in the water. Yeah.
Sideways.
Right.
Yeah.
All right, so we'll jump back in.
Dive on it.
My bladder is now empty.
Yeah.
We're good.
All right.
Good.
Okay. So eventually all criminal charges were dropped, and the civil case took years, but I didn't really see what the resolution was. I know Erickson had passed and Peterson died in the 30s, so
I
nothing
don't
really
like that
came
no
of that.
charges filed or were stuck or whatever.
Yeah. I mean, I think there were so many people to blame ultimately, so many different factors that came together that it was hard to pinpoint, you know, just because he was like kind of a newer captain, right? So like, was he fully warned about the ship? You know, like, did he know all the, you know, did he think that this was an easy fix? Like, what was going on? Did the
Okay, he was
engineer know the
newer.
full- right? Did he know, like, that
he know
the
the full
ship was so
story?
top heavy? Like, there's a lot of questions that I guess they ultimately just would have a hard time proving those things, you know?
And
Okay.
people they want someone to blame. They want someone to be mad
They just
at.
want
Like,
someone to blame, and
Sometimes it's like you said, it's everyone. It's the people that built the ship. It's the people that own the company, own the ship, and so it's hard to say like it's your fault. It's more complicated.
And I think the total payout for the victims, I thought I put it in my notes. It ended up being 5.3 million divided by 540 families. So I think it was around 9,000 each. So it wasn't like a ton of money that they really got in the end.
In like today's numbers? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, like I guess because a lot of I don't know how, like I thought that even the city of Chicago donated more, but that was just one number I read from. I guess by the time you pay different things that need to be paid.
Well, and that also depends. Like, they're not obviously just paying the families that died. They're paying some that survived,
insurance probably, and things like that. Right.
It's like class action suits, right? Like, oh, you're getting this so much money, and then like, I mean, we see the Sobeys things all the time, right? The bread fixing or whatever, and then by the time everybody applies for it, it's like, here's your $10 gift card to Sobeys. You're like,
and it's not even cash; it's a gift card for the company.
I got $400 from Meta though.
For what?
For a class action, just being in Illinois and having Facebook at a certain time.
You're like, that's right.
I was almost
pay up.
Yeah, I was like, yeah.
You're like, I don't even know what you did, but I want it.
And they sent more money later too. Like I was like, I don't know.
They must have really fucked up.
I always do those things, so sometimes the payout is good. I was seriously somewhere I was like, millennials just wait for like these random payouts because we don't have much else to go for.
Yeah. We'll never own a house, so you know what? Meta, just pay me money.
Exactly.
Maybe I'll buy like a Fisher Price house one day.
With the money I got from Meta.
That's right.
Yeah. I know they're probably like $600 now. Who knows?
Yeah.
So the ship ended up going on sale, and the proceeds were going to go to the victims as well. But after they pay all the expenses, there was no proceeds left to really give to victims. It was sold for $46,000. Again, I'm just doing the inflation in real time, and that's about $1.4 million today. It was purchased by a U.S. Navy captain and became the USS Wilmette, which is named for a Chicago suburb, and changes were made to make the ship stable. It basically became a Navy vessel, and it had a successful naval career.
Made safe, I guess. Like,
yeah, well, it transported Franklin Roosevelt, the former president. So it was made safe. They took out a lot of like the upper deck things, like the the luxury items, obviously, because it's a Navy, right? They had like a Navy ship, right? So more practical, I guess.
It'd be weird to be on that ship after everyone that died.
I know. It's like I can imagine the ship itself is probably haunted, and now we're gonna get into some paranormal elements of this.
Yeah, this is a little lighter,
right? We're in October.
Right.
What?
I know. So my next photo across the river, you saw it in the old photo, but this is a new photo taken by me the other day of the Reed Murdoch building. Yes, I took it very quickly, so I hope it's not too blurry.
I thought it was an Ann Getty's photo, or an Annie Leibovitz. Who else do I know?
Thank you. Yeah, if your name is Anne or Annie, like you're probably a photographer.
I would say.
Yeah. Thank you. Probably not as talented, but I appreciate the shout out. Up and coming photographer took this photo.
Book your weddings now. She's very affordable because it's her first wedding. So
exactly. Basically, I'll pay you. It's fine. So this building is said to be haunted because after the disaster, a lot of the bodies end up being temporarily housed in this building. The employees of the company in this building at the time were actually off on their company like retreat, and the location was open. Yeah. So, and it was just across the river, like I said, so it was easy to, I guess, move the bodies there temporarily. Kind of a makeshift morgue. So it's
you like come back from your trip and you're like, why is there a corpse on my desk?
Yeah, a lot of hauntings because of that. Oh my God, yeah.
Just guys, I can't. They're on my papers.
Like, yeah, and it's it's summer in Chicago. I can't imagine.
They
didn't actually stay in this building that long. I think it was just more of a temporary spot. And a lot of companies were donating their trucks at the time and like things like that to help transport bodies. So they were a lot of people. The city was coming together to help make
That's
sure the
good.
bodies got to a place. So they end up being transferred to the 2nd Regiment Army. You go to my next photo. You can see the people lined up. This is all people lined up to go inside to see the dead, try to claim their loved ones, right?
It goes down like 2 blocks.
Yeah, all the way down. Yeah, it's crazy that I can only imagine. And obviously, if you're going here now, there was some hope because some people are still being pulled out later from the ship. But like, if your loved one didn't return, or loved one, sometimes, like I said, it was a whole families that were deceased. So
there's
they
probably
had
not
to
even
spend
people to
some
claim
time
certain people.
trying to get bodies out, and this is where they would come to identify their dead.
It reminds me of like the Halifax explosion when you talked about them
Yes.
being in the, and like some people probably didn't even have anybody to come, especially if they're immigrant families, and if their whole family died, they probably didn't have anybody to name them.
Exactly.
Oh, that's just
If
like
you go to the next photo, this is pretty gruesome.
Whoa.
This is just an image of the morgue, and you see people walking around the bodies just trying to, claim their loved ones. So at the end of the day, all bodies were claimed except for one body of a 7-year-old boy. And he ended up representing kind of all the children who died. His name was Willie Navani. And
So they know his name. So
no, well, yeah, they ended up finding out his name. Novotny, sorry. Willie
Yeah.
Novotny. You can go to the next photo. It's him. I'm actually I was wondering why. So basically found out later that his whole family died during this. So that's why no one claimed him. I don't know how someone claimed the family though and not him. I was a little bit confused
I'm
about
sure
that
like a
part,
coworker or someone who worked
maybe
there
that was
eventually
it.
was
Maybe they
like,
just
I
didn't
know him.
like, right,
Yeah.
right. Maybe he never saw the boy before or something. So
Oh my goodness,
he ended up kind of being just like, it's like the tomb of the unknown soldier. This child was represent all like the lost children that died, and his funeral was attended by like thousands of people in Chicago, and the mayor and everything. So it was just really, really tragic. But I know I'm glad the victims were able to, be found by their family members. But it's still, I can't imagine. So this location, the 2nd Regiment Army, later became known as Harpo Studios, which is where Oprah Winfrey show was
I
recorded.
recognize that name right away.
Right. So when it was a studio, a lot of the employees reported very mysterious events happening, strange noises. They would see ghostly like apparitions that would just disappear. And very sad note, they could sometimes hear children laughing or crying or playing.
I don't mind the laughing
with the
of
plane.
playing.
I mean, creepy, but at least they're happy.
But it's just a reminder that of all the children that
Yeah,
spirits that could be in that building.
at unrest.
Right. So there's lots of reports in this building. Now this building is a McDonald's headquarters, and inside of it is actually a McDonald's restaurant. The McDonald's restaurant, if you recall, when you came to Chicago when you ate Purse Burgers, it was actually that McDonald's restaurant.
No way.
So we've been to this building and we didn't even know it.
Wow.
I remember
okay.
ordering like 13 burgers on the screen, be like, this is the weirdest thing I've ever done. And that, wow.
I was just looking up. I was like, oh, what is it now though? Because I was like, all right, Oprah's studios are gone.
Of course it's a
Okay, what's
fucking
there now?
McDonald's.
And I'm like, oh, it's a McDonald's HQ. And they're like, but there's McDonald's there. And I'm like, oh, I should go see the McDonald's. I'm like, wait a minute. Look on the map. Wait, Google map.
So we
image.
were close to here then
We were-
for the.
we were in that same where that building would have
That's
been.
crazy.
Okay, so for those that are not our personal friends, I mean, you are in a way. We have loved the podcast Wine and Crime for a long time, like almost since they started. I think it was either Lindsay or you, or it was one of
I
us.
think you introduced it to us.
I can't even remember.
Yeah.
So one of us came across them.
I think I
that-
introduced, and that's why we drink. And you brought.
Yes. And so eventually we just became like huge fans of this podcast, and we had planned to go to one of their shows, and COVID happened, and as you know, COVID hit pause on everything. So
Yeah, like literally the weekend that the world shut down.
I
was
know.
the weekend we were supposed to go.
The next week we're supposed to go see Wine and Crime, March 2020 in Chicago.
God damn.
Yeah,
it,
no.
that just-
Literally, Megan and I were leaving the next day, and the day before, they were like, "Everything is canceled," and we were like,
I know. I
"Oh,
was so
okay."
sad because I was
The
looking forward
world
to
is
that so
canceled.
much.
We all
I
thought it was
like,
going to
can
be
we
just a few months.
It's gonna be fine. It'll be fine. I'm like,
Yeah.
So we ended up going
fun.
February 2023, right?
yes.
So
No,
they
no, not 2020. Was it last year?
23. It was last year, 2023.
No, because it
2024.
Because I no,
It
because
was-
it was
it was
a year and
February
a half ago.
20.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was February 2023. It's 2024.
Yeah. How
A
old's your
year
daughter?
ago. She is 2.
Yeah. Okay.
She was
yeah,
still
that makes
like
sense.
she was like
yeah,
you know
because she was a baby.
yeah she was like 8
no
months
sense.
old or something.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
So I just got time checked because I was like, I don't even know what year we're in. Yeah. So Purse Burgers is a big inside joke on that podcast where Lucy always tended to go out to McDonald's after like they're out drinking and everyone gets food, but she would like have a burger or two in her purse for later. You never know when you might just like want to have a burger at 6 a.m. when you wake up.
Which I agree with.
But it's a joke. It's a joke now within like the whole podcast. And even when I got married, I was telling these two that one thing I really
You dropped
really
a
want.
hint.
I've like told you, if you can make Purse Burgers happen, that's what I want.
And we did.
And then I said, okay, no, I'm gonna try to forget that I said that. If it happens, great. And then of
And
course,
she literally did forget that.
yeah, I was shocked. Shocked. It was so great.
I ordered like 60 burgers or something. I'm like, this is ridiculous.
And
but okay.
everyone was
Yeah.
like everyone was freaking out about these burgers.
Yeah.
Anyway, so we're going to their live show and Lindsay's like, oh, there's a McDonald's right across the street. And I thought, hey, like we're best friends with the podcast girls, right?
Clearly.
So like let's get burgers for ourselves,
in our minds.
but let's get them burgers too, because then maybe they'll think, oh my God, these chicks are so cool. And so yeah, I got like 10 burgers. I don't know, I got a whole bunch.
Well,
bunch
we
of
ate some
singles.
ourselves.
Yeah.
Well,
I'm sure they were very grateful in the moment to have a burger.
no matter how cold they were by the time we got them to them.
Yeah, they're a little
It doesn't even matter.
I
if they're
mean,
cold.
that's
McDonald's
their fault for
burgers-
having a show in Chicago in February. So
Yeah,
sorry,
fair.
gals.
Yeah, but it was so good. So Purse Burgers live on, and
Yeah.
I invite you now to start incorporating Purse Burgers into your life.
I mean, to be
Yes.
fair, I had Purse Burgers when I was in high school because we would
You
go to
didn't even
Burger
know it.
King.
Oh, ahead
I
of your
didn't even know it.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We would go there and it was a 2-for-1 deal. So I'd always have an extra one for later and I'd pull
They
it
don't
out
even
of history
have
class.
this
I
like that anymore.
really want a burger now. I'm not.
No,
Okay.
damn it.
All right, so let me just get to the last little bit of paranormal that I have for you. So other haunted locations include the Chicago River itself. You can go to my last photo. This is a photo again taken by me.
I already had a
You can see the bridge. Yeah, this is exactly this part of water in front of the bridge you see in the distance. That's exactly where the Eastland was.
Oh, wow.
Damn.
So a lot of people have reported to hear cries and screams from the river. Some stories even say that people have called like 911 because they thought they, hear or see someone in the water drowning. And
Is it
then
like
the
a certain
emergency
time of year? Like, is it
services-
around the time of it?
I
or
didn't hear
do you know?
that. It
Okay.
could be. I will be honest. I've been here during the daytime all the time, and
it's
I
probably
haven't
too much going on to hear.
anything. So maybe it's too loud. Maybe I have to go at like nighttime at some point.
Which we will next time that we're
cool.
visiting.
As long as we're all together, do not go by yourself, please.
I mean, no. You can see there's lots of seeing they put by the river. They spent like I don't know how many millions or
To read you.
whatever to put money into the Chicago River Walk, and it is beautiful.
It's like one of the prettiest things I've ever seen, honestly.
It's gorgeous. So we can sit along the river. You can see there's many benches. There's benches and like spots to stop all the way along the river. You can go kind of walk up on like Walker or go down below right by the river too. So yeah, people report a lot of activity around this area. I'm not surprised. A lot
It's
of
a lot of
ghost
human
hunting
energy.
happens around there. Right. It's a lot of energy, a lot of tragedy. Like I just like shivers thinking about like the screams that they described of
I
when
can't
this
even like
happened.
go there.
Thank you.
because- Yeah.
Yeah. It is really like nothing good to like say about this. It's just, it's a lot of like I think a lot of the maritime disasters we've covered, it's all these different factors coming into play where it's often not just one thing. It's like numerous things are going wrong or like negligence or not considering, okay, if we add the weight here, like how is that going to affect the ship? A lot of things were ignored and unfortunately led to tragedy in the Chicago River. And that's the story of the SS Eastland.
I had never heard of this
Ever.
I know, Lindsay, you and I for sure. We walked down here when we first went, and we walked like a good length, and I'm sure
Yeah.
we walked past that plaque and didn't even paid any mind.
We
Take in what it was.
The hotel we stayed in would have looked out on this part of the river.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about that. I definitely wouldn't have. I didn't see the plaque at that time.
No,
'cause I
but
probably would
when
have
you
been,
showed me the
Googling.
photo of that building, I recognized that
Yeah.
building because I remember seeing the restaurant underneath. Like I remember
Yeah.
vividly, and even I think we went down last time. I think we walked down there a little bit, but it's just like I'd never heard of this. It's insane.
That's like one of the only remaining buildings that in that immediate area that was there during that time. So it is very like it's been there a long time. There's been modifications to the Reed Murdoch building, but you can see it looks,
Well, I mean, they normally have to for
very
like
similar,
stabilization
right.
or cracks or something like that. So
Except when it comes to ships. Ships, they just keep slapping things on top until it literally sinks.
I even heard that Encyclopedia Britannica has their HQ at that building now.
Damn.
Yeah.
Listen, that was that was
really
crazy.
good.
If I never would have known about that unless you decided to cover it. So
Yeah.
thank you for the knowledge. I feel super
And
bummed
thank
out
you,
now.
Chicago, for
yeah, I need another drink.
If I was
Yeah.
living in Chicago, I probably wouldn't know about it either. I think it's it's an important story to share.
Did you like randomly just stumble upon this and you were like, oh, I got to cover this? Or how did you?
I heard about it. I don't know when I heard about it, but it was sometime like probably years ago since I've been here, and so it was on the list kind of right away for me.
This is it's local to you now.
It was local, so I've kind of heard about it, but I didn't know all the details until I really started researching this case. So I knew kind of like what more or less what the plaque had offered and a few extra details. And I've been to the Chicago History Museum, and I want to learn more about Chicago. Like I feel like you live in a city, you start to just get like set in your life, and
It's
you
like
don't
used to your same
explore
roots
enough,
and-
right?
yeah,
You never explore enough when you're just living somewhere. So I'm trying to do that with Chicago, and I knew I wanted to like learn more about this and cover it at some point. So that was
Got
today.
2 birds stoned at once.
Yeah, with one rock.
And I also really appreciate the amount of old photos you have.
I know there was actually, I could have put so much more, but I was thinking, also for our lovely video editor,
Thank you. I
I
appreciate it.
will also number these better in the folder.
If I ever have a Gilgo 27 pictures again, I will just leave the podcast. Like that's
I'll never do it again.
we never
We
hear
don't
from
have a
Chantal.
video that week.
But
It's just a slideshow. That's it.
what you can do if you want to put the rest of the photos into a separate folder, I could upload them still. Just that way, if it's
Yeah, I can find more
different
photos
angles.
for sure. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of photos, and another thing too is a lot of press were around at this point too. So there's lots of reporters taking photos. So
Damn.
there are quite a lot of photos actually from this tragedy.
Well, we'll put these ones into the episode, and then any extra I'll upload to Instagram. But okay, I mean, like, great case, a great job telling the story.
Yeah.
The case is so
you. As always.
sad, but yeah, great
It is
great
sad.
storytelling.
Yeah, but
It's like sad how often tragedy comes from like stupidity or what also kind of feels like greed. It's
No,
like
it
it's,
definitely is
it's-
greed.
It's like, oh, this is a better business decision
yeah.
to put concrete on the. Anyways,
I know.
It's
It's like already had top heavy issues. Like
It's not even about to like the amount of
But
boats
make a
they
rock
have, like,
garden.
jackets. It's like well, it's like what Lindsay said at the right at the beginning. They wanted it to be faster. They wanted it to be lighter to go faster. So they just took things off.
motivation, money. Often,
Yeah, it's all
right?
money. Like on my
And
cat.
and having like chartering this picnic was going to be like their biggest money day of
That-
the year. So they were like,
it's not even like that. Just makes me so sad that like all of these people were so looking forward to this one day a year that they get off. It's like this big deal, and it's like, oh, and just like here you go. Here's your PTSD. If you didn't die, you got one or the
Right.
other.
Oh,
Well,
so
yeah,
we're just
obviously-
gonna have your whole family wiped out.
Yeah,
Or
right.
or best
Oh,
case
your-
scenario, just
your
some of
family
your
line?
family.
Done.
yeah,
Just done.
yeah. I don't know how they recovered from all that. I
Oh,
can
mentally, I'm
imagine
sure it was a fucking nightmare.
Oh yeah, yeah.
All right. Well, what a great way to
Anyways.
kick off the weekend.
Yeah,
I
it's
know,
great.
but we
way.
are in October, and I also chose it for this time because it does have a lot of paranormal
Haunting.
elements, which I mean I kind of probably scratched the surface of, but I would like to do a Chicago ghost tour at some point. Maybe I'll save it for when you ladies visit me again. Hello, come visit.
Maybe we can do a little video for it.
Yeah, we see
For
what
the
extra
socials?
content. I know
Content.
Yeah.
Right. So I think there's definitely places to explore. We'll have to go back to the McDonald's, go by the river.
Eat first burgers while we're trying to listen for ghosts.
I want McDonald's burgers now so bad.
Yeah, me too. Yeah.
I am
Like this almost rivals when I did the whole freaking McDonald's case, and then we talked about McDonald's burgers for the last 20 minutes.
I was thinking about like, are we going to talk about McDonald's? Try to like,
my aunt just actually, so my cousin and his wife were listening to the McDonald's one while they were on their way to PEI, and then they told my aunt, and so now my aunt, she's like, that's the one that I want to start with. So she was like, apparently they really were like, this is really cool. They didn't know this. Well, I mean,
Listen,
it's cool, but like,
we're not professionals, but I think that we have great chemistry because I pretend to like you both very much.
Yeah,
because you've been playing the long game with us to still pretend.
And we're all a couple like
20 years later,
goody two shoes, type A, want to get that A plus. So the research is pretty good. It's not perfect, but it's pretty good. And so then that blend just leads to like you're listening to three crazy people tell a cool story. Sad sometimes, like this one's not.
I know, like I wanted to always
that little
like,
kid's like looking me in my eyes. I can't. I'm going to close these photos.
Oh yeah, just change the photos. Yeah. I know. I always want to put like more detail, but we're also, this is our passion project right now, and I don't want it to be a 2-hour edit for myself or Chantel.
Am I ever going to live that down? Holy shit, you guys. It was 1 2-hour episode.
And actually, honestly, it wasn't that.
It wasn't once we edited it. But it was still like, it's just
I had to,
it was heavy as well. It was a heavy episode. So we're talking about Gilgo, everybody. Right. It was a heavy episode to re-listen to again.
Yeah, because
I'm like, there was issues with the filming. Like, it was just
fun. Yeah.
And I mean,
but it was very interesting. And I thought, you had to go over all the details. Like,
and that's the thing. Okay. So obviously we're not always going to do the super long, super intense, because this podcast is meant to be an umbrella of many different topics, and some will be lighter, some will be more sciencey, et cetera, et cetera. But I thought that was a really interesting case, and it had current breaking information, and it's literally based on a beach, so it just felt like
it was definitely in our wheelhouse for topics. So.
But that being said, I'm gonna do a couple later ones, like when I did the 2020 Nova Scotia massacre. I needed to cool it because that
was a really depressing start, but
it was really depressing.
Got there.
My friend at work, actually, he listened to the Gilgo one and he was highly impressed with it. He was like, that was a really good one. I was like, yeah, I know it is. It was just a bitch to edit, but we love Megan anyway, so it wasn't all her fault.
Yeah, I mean, like I'm only just telling the story of that fucking psycho. Anyway,
we're going. We're going.
Our tangent
before this becomes a long one.
Thank you for listening. We really appreciate your support.
Please,
we'd love a coffee.
We would love a coffee. Please follow our podcast on Apple Podcasts or on Spotify. We are trying
to our Instagram account too,
and our Instagram and our YouTube,
and our TikTok, YouTube.
Follow us home. Follow us to
Coast Files Pod.
Follow us in your car.
We love it.
We are really
You'll be our next
close
case.
to 100 people on followers on Apple. By the time this comes out, like hopefully we've gotten to 100.
Maybe.
Yeah. So just if it doesn't cost you anything,
don't make me hunt down my friends anymore and force them to follow.
Yeah, our friends are sick and tired of her shit. So she guys can tell my family friends. That would be great.
Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, well, we could keep going. So
that's it. Happy October. Halloween's around the corner, you guys.
Start of October. Happy spooky season.
And go get that PSL. I don't care what Chantel says. Go and get it.
Yeah.
Okay, we love you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening today. We loved having you. If you liked the episode, share with your friends, family, or anyone who would enjoy it. Also, take a moment to review our podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or YouTube. Leaving us a like or comment really helps. If you'd like to buy us a coffee, please visit our coffee page at www.ko-fi.com/coastfiles. Email us at coastfilespod@gmail.com. Follow us on Instagram at coastfilespod, or visit our website at www.coastfiles.com. You can find the sources for today's episode on our website. See you next week with a new episode.